I think 50-50 couples are insane.
What's the advice that you share for couples that are sharing finances?
Personal finances are personal.
Does it matter what gender it is as well?
Yeah, great question.
Vivian Tu,
former Wall Street trader turned expert.
The CEO and founder of Your Rich BFF.
She teaches a lot around personal finance.
We've been told our entire lives that you need to be a provider. So I think men need to realize that they have other values to bring versus just their money.
Yeah, totally.
And women need to appreciate that.
What's financial cheating? Why is it that some people think it's worse than physical cheating?
Financial infidelity is...
Vivian, thanks so much for coming on the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
So first question for you is, why do rich people like to buy fake luxury bags?
Yeah. So this actually comes from a New Yorker, I can't remember if it was New York Times or New Yorker article, but essentially I think the interest in buying potentially like fake luxury items comes from the ability to blend in while getting to have this little secret that you didn't necessarily spend that full sticker price to be fully blended in. I noticed this a lot in my early 20s. When I had less money, I was much more willing to shell out for designer goods. I felt like I wanted people to think I had money, think I had made it, I was successful. And so I would allocate a lot of the money that I had saved to buying designer clothes, designer accessories. And now that I'm 30, now that I have quite a bit more money, I'm in a much more comfortable financial situation, I'm a multimillionaire, I just like don't feel the need to do that. Sure, I still certainly buy a couple of designer items every year. It's a little treat to myself. But there are times that I see designer things and then I'm able to find something very, very similar, a dupe on Amazon, and I'll buy that instead because what's the point? Everybody knows I can afford that bag. Everybody knows I can afford those shoes. Is it necessarily prudent for me to be doing that? Maybe not. And I'd rather invest that money and make it grow versus buying something that will ultimately potentially lose money over time.
Yeah, it's kind of the irony of it, right? I was in Vietnam with my ex-girlfriend, and she's kind of just starting in her career in her early 20s. And she's like, obviously she could buy this, but then no one would believe that she could actually,
Yes.
afford these luxury items because she's just kind of starting out. And she's like, as soon as I get rich or as soon as I make money, I'm definitely going to come back and buy these luxury duped items. And I'm like, I thought about it. It kind of took me back for a second, but like it totally makes sense, right? If you don't care about these luxury brands and you're just doing it as a way to show like some sort of status symbol or get in the right room, I mean, it's kind of the smartest thing you can do as like a prudent, frugal purchaser, I guess, a consumer, right?
Yes, definitely. And I mean, I was walking down the street the other day and, one of my girlfriends was like, oh, are those the, XYZ earrings? And I said, no, these were $18 off of, some random store I found on the internet. But she was none the wiser. And she just assumed that I had the real thing. And to your point, like when you have the money, you feel so much less inclined to try and impress people because you don't need their validation anymore. Your success, your finances are no longer as tied to external perceptions of you.
Yeah, totally. It's kind of I guess it's something that never gets unlearned as an immigrant as well. I don't know if were you born in the US and your parents immigrated here?
Yes. So my parents immigrated to the US in their early 20s and I was born in Maryland.
Got it. Yeah. So I was born in Korea and it's similar. I think the lessons in terms of money that we've been taught have been very similar in terms of frugality and so forth. That's just something I can't really unlearn. But I'm curious to know, you talk about this in your book as well, just kind of what are some of the more helpful lessons around money that you've learned from your parents? And maybe what are the things that have been hardest for you to unlearn that your parents
Yeah.
have really drilled into you from the early childhood?
Yeah, I think one thing that my parents really set me up for success with is saving and frugality. There is a So my family's from Shanghai, and we don't even speak traditional Mandarin, but at home we speak a dialect called Shanghainese. And there's a phrase that my dad would always say, which is "钞票要用了多可能," which essentially translates to money needs to be used on the knife's edge, like on the blade of the knife, meaning you should really only spend when it's absolutely necessary. Of course, immigrant parents love to speak in proverbs. And I think that I have taken that maybe sometimes a little too far. I think it did help me in my early career when I didn't have a lot of money. I was very frugal. I certainly made a lot better spending decisions than some of my peers. But it got to a point where I valued money more than my time, even when it didn't make sense. So
Can you give me an
instead
example?
of, yeah, so like I am someone who will, before I buy a pair of jeans, I will Google search every single retailer that sells this exact pair of jeans. And then I will find the cash back website. And then I will find the coupon code. And then I will compare and contrast and compare and contrast. Little do I know, it's now 4 hours later. I still haven't even hit purchase on these stupid jeans. And I've wasted 4 hours of my time, which at my current, stage in my career is very expensive. I don't have 4 hours to waste. And I did it for what? 20% off. And so I think in
I
some
totally
cases,
relate,
yes.
by the way, everything you're saying. I'm like, okay.
Yeah, like I think in some cases, frugality and being able to save and being mindful with your money is great. In other cases, like that one, at a certain point, girlfriend, you're just not getting that extra 2% cash back. Just buy the jeans. It's not going to make a difference. And you'll get 3.5 hours of your life back. And I have to remind myself that money is not the only currency in my life anymore. Time is the only one that I can't buy more of.
Mm. Are there helpful frameworks or questions that you ask yourself that can help you? Because I'm sure you hear something on a podcast or you try to unlearn a lesson, and if it's something that's so ingrained into you from childhood, it kind of creeps its way back. Like I find myself, oh, I'm doing so good. I'm valuing my time at $1,000 an hour, $2,000 an hour, whatever it might be, and then you all of a sudden like see a discount, and then you'd rather go to this place even though it takes you like an hour longer. So you're always finding a
Mhm.
way to creep back into your natural instincts. But how do you remind yourself, or what are the things that you do to continue to unlearn those things?
Yeah, I would say I practice the is it worth it equation, otherwise known as value based spending. You mentioned you're valuing your time at a certain rate. And what I like to do now, instead of thinking about what things cost, I break it down into how many hours would I have to work to buy this thing. And that has been so freeing, honestly, because I don't think most people understand the value of a dollar, not in like the way like your dad used to lecture you about this, but like I don't think we truly understand what it took for us to get a certain amount of money. And so when we actually break down purchases into our time and our labor, it helps us visualize. So like a good example is if you make, you know, $20 an hour and you see a pair of yoga pants that you really want and they're $80. That's 4 hours of your time. And that's assuming the $20 is post tax. You order pad thai takeout. That's probably an hour and a half of your time. You're going on vacation. How many hours of your time do you have to sit at your desk to afford that vacation? This has helped me reframe a lot of things that in my mind that I was like, this is not worth it versus this is worth it. And then when I actually calculated back the time that it would save me, it became so worth it. So speaking of like, we don't all have the same 24 hours in a day. I have a housekeeper. And, it used to be, I was like, oh, I'll just do it myself. And I realized, one, I'm very, very bad at cleaning the shower tub. I am also someone who really does not enjoy cleaning. I know some people find it like really soothing, or like I have like one of my best girlfriends. She's like, oh, the smell of Windex, it just like gets me going. I'm like, that is so incredibly weird because I hate cleaning. And I think about, me paying my housekeeper $200 for 4 hours of work. She gets compensated fairly, but also I get back that time. It's not like I traded my time to then buy something and then just have that thing. Like I gave up money for time and I got that time back, which is great. And it's worth way more than $200 to me to have 4 hours of my time back.
Yeah, I think the misconception is that some people hear that and they think, okay, I'm going to outsource everything in my life, but I'm not really going to do anything with my time that I've gotten back, right? They're just going to chill on their couch. They're going to call their friends. They're going to watch Netflix. It's not the way it works, right? You're doing this, but it also pushes you now to, okay, I've outsourced this. Now I have 4 extra hours. I would imagine for you, you're trying to figure out what's the highest value of my time there so that I can earn more than $200 during the four hours that you're spending. So how do you prioritize now when you're running your business or your day-to-day? What is the most valuable thing that can give you the highest ROI when you're trying to allocate what time you're spending on what?
I think there's certainly something that I could be doing with the most maximizable ROI. It's not the thing I'm always doing, because the only reason the ROI for that thing is so high is because I've built out other parts of my business. So, in terms of how my brand is set up, the most lucrative thing that I could possibly be doing is either speaking events or brand partnerships. That said, the only reason I'm getting paid thousands of dollars for 1 hour of my time is because of the brand I built. So I can't just stop creating editorial content. I can't stop having a podcast. I can't not write a book. I only get what I get now paid to speak for an hour because of all of that other time that I've spent doing all of these other things. In the same thing with a brand partnership, like they're not necessarily paying me to just make the video, right? Like they could certainly get that done cheaper. They're using it to reach my audience. And that audience took years to build and cultivate that trust. And so I would say it's a little bit of a mix. And part of that is, yes, there are things that I want to do to make money, to maximize the return on investment of my company. But there are other things that I need to do that don't have an immediate dollar value payoff that will ultimately elevate my brand, elevate my company, and elevate my status as somebody worth hiring.
Right. Yeah, makes sense. Your audience, is it fair to say that it's a lot of, is it Gen Z and Millennials? Since is it TikTok kind of the main channel that you built your audience off initially?
TikTok was my first platform. I would say now I have sizable followings across most of my social media platforms, including Meta platforms, YouTube, even just like a Snapchat, Pinterest, sometimes even LinkedIn. So I'm on everything. But yeah, I would say that they're all serving a purpose. My audience on Snapchat is much younger. My audience on TikTok is younger. My audience on YouTube and Meta are a little bit older. Obviously, YouTube having long form as well feels a little bit stickier. But, Meta platforms are really great for discovery right now, as is TikTok. So everything has a time and a place and a purpose.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, it's great to hear that you're able to resonate. It's rare for people to be able to go from one platform to another and still have that message resonate. But my question for you was, given that you're at the heartbeat of what Gen Z and younger millennials are thinking about money, the questions they have around money, what is your take around how Gen Z and millennials think about money and the relationship with money versus perhaps some of the older generations, that say the baby boomers? Have you noticed a noticeable difference in terms of what these younger generations think about money?
I think the younger generation feels a little bit more defeated. So our
Mm,
grandparents, our parents, very much ascribed to this American dream, which was you study hard, you get into the right college, you get that degree, which wasn't that expensive back then. You graduate, you get a good job, you climb the ladder, you become the CEO, and you live happily ever after with your white picket fence house, 2 kids, and a golden retriever. And that storybook line just doesn't work anymore because millennials and Gen Z have faced a number of crises, not to mention the fact that student loan balances have exploded. The cost of education has 10x'd over the past 50 years. The cost of living has gone up while wages have stagnated. And right now, it's cheaper to rent than buy in 70% of all US markets. So it's like saying like, hey, your parents played Monopoly and learned how to play and taught you how to play, but suddenly you're expected to know the Monopoly rules and play chess. You didn't learn how to play chess. You learned how to play a completely different board game. And so I think there's quite a bit of disillusionment. And I've noticed this with young people being like, why should I save for retirement? World's going to blow up in asteroid's going to hit us or global warming will take us out before I even get there. And yes, I understand the desire to have fun today, but I am very much of the camp of like, okay, but what if it doesn't? What if we don't get abducted by aliens? What if we don't get hit by an asteroid? What if global warming doesn't take us out? We develop technology and stop polluting the earth as much. Then what? Then you are now, fast forward in the future, you are 60, 70, 80 years old. You don't have a dollar saved for retirement. What are you going to do? You're going to work until you die? That sounds awful. So I am very much middle of the fairway viewpoint in that, yes, you can have fun today, but we also have to take care of future us.
mm. Yeah. I saw an interesting stat on Forbes where it was talking about the transparency and the open communication these different generations have around talking about money, communicating about money. And it said 76% of millennials, 74% of Gen Z were willing to discuss what they were making, at work, discuss their salary, how much they were making, what they're spending on, what their rent cost is, and all that stuff, compared to 40% of baby boomers, meaning younger generations are just much more communicative and transparent about money in general, which is a great thing. And I think that could be the advent of social media or just a cultural difference. But what do you make of that? What do you make of people openly talking about what they're making? Because it means also they're comparing what they're making and how much their net worth is compared to someone else, where compared to different generations where money was a taboo, right? There's 3 things you don't talk about, which is sex, money, religion. Which you could argue the benefit of that is that you're able to kind of live in your own confined bubble without comparing about what other people look like, what other people are making, let's say. So
Do we
what are
want that
your
though?
overall thoughts on that? I don't know. I'd
Yeah,
love to get your thoughts on that.
yeah. So I think for me, I am so happy that Gen Z and, younger millennials are talking more about money because it's weird that we've been told it's tacky and taboo to talk about money because you know who loves to talk about money? Rich people. And I mentioned this in my book, Rich AF. Uh, it's just like a rule for you, but not for me, right? Like we're telling people that it's rude when in fact, when you actually discuss money with your peers, you have more information, you're able to better negotiate, and you're able to demand what you're worth. And so it only helps you to have these conversations. I do think talking about money oftentimes can potentially lead to discomfort or awkwardness or even jealousy. But I think a lot of that may come from a lack of transparency. So, similar to how social media is a highlight reel, we often want to talk about our wins. So, we talk about, oh, I got a promotion at work, I got a raise, I'm going on vacation to Greece, whatever. Great. You didn't mention how, before you got that promotion or that raise, your last job, you got laid off. You didn't talk about how when you went to that trip on Greece, like you had to split your room with 4 other people. And I think what I really advocate for is not even just talking about money, but financial transparency with friends and among peers, because we will beat ourselves up and be like, I'm doing bad. I don't have enough money. How do all my friends, live this life? And it's like all of your friends are in debt, or maybe some of your friends' parents pay for their rent. And you don't know that because people aren't being fully honest about their financial situations. So yes, we should talk to our friends about money, but I really encourage people to be honest when they're doing that and share both good and bad.
I want to expand on a little bit. So I was catching up with a friend of mine over drinks, I think like a week and a half ago. And I haven't seen her for about a year and a half. She's talking about how her ex-boyfriend, they were dating for about 6 months, 7 months, didn't really talk about money in the initial parts of the relationship. And it turned out she was earning significantly more than he was. And it got to this point where she was paying for a lot of the things in the relationship, and it just kind of put a tension in the air. I guess that's probably the political right way to say it on her perspective. So it was a deal breaker in the end for her. What is talking about openly communicating and being transparent? When is the right time? When you're dealing with a significant other, let's say you just started dating, butterflies are in the air. What is the right moment to be talking about finances? And do you go right in there and say how much you're making and what your expectations of it in the early days? Or is that going to be like a non-romantic thing to do?
Yeah. Maybe I am, very, very staunch believer, but I think you should start talking about money on the first date, right? It doesn't have to be show me your pay stub or what's your credit score, but it can be, if money was not a factor, what job would you have? If I gave you $100,000 or I gave you $1 million, what would you do with it? Describe your dream vacation. How much does it cost? It just gets numbers in the room. And once you do that, conversations containing a dollar sign will automatically be less awkward. And then you transition into, okay, so we are going on a couple dates, maybe you're a gentleman, you paid on the first date, but if we're going on consistent dates, like, should I occasionally pay? How are we splitting this? Or, oh, we're going to go on vacation together. Who's paying for what? Or, oh, we've decided we really like each other. We're going to move in together. How are we splitting that rent? And so I think when you start those conversations earlier, it's a lot easier to broach the subject versus out of the blue, what do you make? That's not going to go well. But if you're planning something fun and you're really excited and you're saying, hey, okay, this overall trip is going to cost $4,000. I am able to budget for XYZ, and you feel comfortable sharing because I make XYZ. And then kind of see where the conversation goes. You can also just be like, candidly, like, do you mind me asking, like, how much do you make? And if your significant other that you're dating and have been dating for a little bit now truly cares about you and wants to make this vacation something that is an add to your life versus a financial burden, I think they'd be more than happy to share that information with you on that as needed basis. And that is a perfect time to bring it up when you're splitting a big trip or when you're starting to think about moving in together.
Yeah, what's your stance on that? What's the advice that you share for couples that are sharing finances? Is it just whoever is earning more will will pay the percentage of whatever the big vacation is or rent is. Does it matter what gender it is as well? You know, I have friends that are very traditional, and also have friends that want to split everything kind of on the in the middle, no matter what their finances are. Or is it really dependent on what each couple values? Is there no right answer here? How do you generally would advise people to approach that?
So I will caveat this that personal finances are personal, so there's no right answer. However, personally, I think 50-50 couples are insane because you are never going to be 50-50. 50-50 couples don't exist because some days I only have 20% energy or effort or love or affection. And if you only come to the table with your allocated 50, we don't even have 100% together. And that's a problem. When it comes to finances, I find when it really breaks down, 50-50 couples nickel and dime each other for the littlest things. I'm not going to name names, but I have a friend, and I saw that her significant other Venmo'd her for like toilet paper. And that rubbed me like really wrong because you're living with this person. You are incredibly close. This is the person that in theory you're the closest with on earth. And you Venmo'd them half of $18 for toilet paper? Like, it just seems like such a strange concept to me. Whereas I think it needs to be an open conversation with each couple. I'll give an example. When my fiance and I first met, he made a lot more money than I did. And he never made me feel bad about it. He never made me feel any type of way. I was not less than him. My career was just as important. And he paid for everything. He paid for those dinners. He paid for our vacations. Sometimes I would be like, oh, love these shoes. Can't afford them. He would surprise me with them later for a gift for some holiday or whatever. And he was so thoughtful and generous with money that it was never a sticking point or a problem. And that set a precedent. And I always joke, this man is the best angel investor of all time because he found me diamond in the rough 7 years ago. And now our financial situation looks very, very different. His career has taken off like a rocket ship. He makes a wonderful living. I have had an incredibly unique opportunity that very few people get. And because of that, I now make significantly more than he does, multiples of what he does. And because he had set that precedent of never making me feel bad, never feeling like my career was on the back burner, anything like that, that has been the established path. When we would split rent, he paid more because he made more. And now what we do is that we split our mortgage in a optimized way so that we can both take a mortgage interest tax deduction. But for the home that we rent, I pay the vast majority of that rent. And it's because that is what is fair. It is equitable in our relationship because I make more now. And so when I hear people say that they're 50-50 partners and one partner makes more money, like significantly more money, it makes me upset because it's not a comparable burden on each partner. For one partner, rent might be 30% of their income. And for the other, it might be 5%. And so I think you guys should shoulder burdens together in the same way that you would shoulder an emotional burden or a social obligation or doing the laundry. Like, you should shoulder financial burdens equitably.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, it's a sensitive topic, right? Because I know money, like my parents are divorced, and money was by far the biggest reason for the divorce. And I still think, I could be wrong here, but I think money is still like the top 2, maybe even the top reason.
Money and sex are the top 2 reasons. Yep.
Money and sex, of course.
Yeah.
And, going back to my friend here, she was talking about how she was starting to lose respect for her partner because she was having to take care of him all the time. And it felt like it was almost less like the ambition that he didn't have of wanting to put himself in a better place. So do you think that when people are not willing to share their finances so much, that it could be used for potential detriment in the relationship? Take, for example, a friend of mine, my friend that was starting to lose respect. Or do you think this is more of a gender thing also? Like, do you think women can respect men that are not earning as much as them, especially if it's significantly less?
I think that's a really good question. And I think I'm going to be so transparent here. I do feel like a part of the reason why I don't feel any type of way about making more money or anything like that is like because my partner has an incredibly lucrative career on his own, and he is, you know, well lauded, lots of accolades, continuously promoted, getting opportunities. So in any other reality, if I had any other job aside from being Your Rich BFF, he would most certainly be our breadwinner. And I think he and I both know that. So when you're comparing an A+ student and an A++ student, it doesn't feel that crazy. When you're comparing an A student and a C student, the difference is a little bit more vast. I don't want to put the blame on your friend. I want to put it on society. But I do think that society has made us feel like the only value men, and this is harmful to both men and women, men bring to relationships is financial. I know guys, and some of them are my friends, who think that their biggest selling point is the fact that they can be a breadwinner. And when they meet a woman who makes more money than them or has her own bread, they don't even know how to act because they feel like that's all they can bring. Whereas, sure, it was nice that my now fiance made more money when we first met, but he brought so much more to the table. He was my confidant. He was kind and funny, and he remembered all of the little things. He's a good listener. When I have questions and concerns about my business, he'll sit down with me and prioritize my fears and my worries. And I think a lot of men need to, one, learn how to do that, but two, realize that they have value aside from just their financial bearing. And I think women also need to appreciate that that is the case, and there is intrinsic value in having a partner that can do those things for you versus just expecting them to bring money to the relationship, because you can have two rich people marry each other and it still doesn't work out. And so I think it's a balance of both.
Yeah, sometimes two rich people marrying together is sometimes even a bigger detriment, right? Because their egos
It's
are
worse.
flaring,
Yeah.
yeah. So you never really know.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think you're a great example of someone that's earning more than the partner, and you guys are still able to make it work into a healthy relationship. Yeah, I'm reading this book called The Evolution of Desire by Dr. David Buss. He's like one of the early guys that popularized evolutionary psychology. And he did the world's largest multicultural study on human mating. And he pretty much talked about these consistent patterns that he saw among tens of thousands of people. And women certainly look for financial resources and high status as their number one kind of, I guess, preferences when choosing male mates. And then males look for physical beauty. And I think that kind of goes back to the whole reproductive instincts that we have back from society. But this, you kind of touched on a little bit, but maybe we can go a little deeper. But how do men particularly uncouple their self-worth with the net worth that they have? And what should women look for in male partners beyond just financial status? Given that if that's the only thing they're looking really for, the next person that makes more money is just going to be right around the corner naturally.
Yeah. I think dating apps have led to the worst, like buyer's remorse.
Mm.
Not all of them. Some of them, the swiping is so crazy that there's always going to be someone hotter. There's always going to be someone that makes more money. And I think for men who are dating, it's hard. I'm not going to lie. We've been told our entire lives that you need to be a provider, that you need to, take care of your family, take care of your wife. And I think realizing that taking care of your family and taking care of your partner can mean many different things is what we should ground in. This is being able to be there for somebody when things are good and when things are bad. That means when they see you win, like when a man sees his partner win, he should be the happiest person on earth. I will say, like, I encourage everybody to look for partners, male, female, like gay, like straight, whatever. You want your partner to be your biggest cheerleader. You are not allowed to have haters at home, because I have been in relationships where anytime I shined bright, it felt like I was dimming my partner's light. And that is, I think, the worst feeling, because you don't even feel like you can share with the most important person in your life the good stuff. And that sucks. So I think men need to realize that they have other values to bring: being good listeners, being kind, being thoughtful, being generous with both their time and their effort and their emotional capacity versus just their money. And women need to appreciate that not necessarily that their partner has to be the breadwinner. They have to be a partner. And that's two people working together, not just one person doing all of the labor and the other person sitting aside and waiting to be fed. I also think that's a really harmful thought, because if somebody has the power to feed you, they have the power to starve you. Like, I don't want to be a kept woman. I want to have my own money. I want to have my own prospects, because ultimately I want to have control and agency over my own life.
Digging that into that a little bit more. Well, first of all, what's financial cheating? And why is it that some people think it's worse than physical cheating? I've never heard of financial cheating before, so I'd love to get into this.
Yeah, so financial cheating, financial infidelity is when you essentially lie about your finances to your partner. So this can include things like having debt that you do not disclose to your partner that could be very important and impactful to your life together. Think, secret maxed out credit card or 6 figures of student loan debt that you didn't mention. Financial infidelity can also include hiding money. So that's having a secret bank account that your other partner doesn't know about. This is not to say that you shouldn't have your own, but your partner should know you have your own bank account. I ascribe to a yours, mine, and ours situation. I have money, you have money, we have money. Not I have money, you have money, we have money, and then I have a secret pot over here that you don't know about. And then also, it's just hiding things that you frankly shouldn't be hiding. So making large purchases without consulting your partner when it's both of your money, or the age-old trope of mom and daughter coming home from the mall and running upstairs to hide the packages or hide the purchases. Like, you want to be honest financially with your partner, because the more you communicate, the easier it'll be. Whereas if you're lying about what you're spending, saving, earning, or keeping, it's just going to start your relationship off on a really rocky foot.
Makes sense. I want to make sure we have enough time to talk about actually earning more money, saving money, investing money. Mm-hmm. What's your philosophy around, some money advisors talk about saving every little thing that you have. Don't spend money on Starbucks. I think this guy like Graham Steffens. He doesn't spend money on buying any coffee. He makes coffee at home, even though he makes like $500,000 a month. Whereas some people, advocate just earning more. They don't really talk about penny pinching. Where do you fall in that ball cap? And does it matter at what money you're making to have that type of philosophy, whether you're making 50,000 or whether you're making $500,000?
Yes, I think being mindful with your spending is important. However, I think we've placed way too much emphasis as a society on scrimping and saving. I did the math. If you get a $5 latte every single day, it works out to be roughly $2,000 a year. And, you've seen the headlines. Millennials can't buy homes because they like avocado toast and coffee. It's like, no. Where are you getting a house for $2,000? Where are you even putting a down payment down for $2,000? So you would have to go years and years and years and years without coffee or avocado toast to even potentially have a tiny fraction of a down payment. And by that time, that market would probably have already priced you out anyway. So I am very much, an advocate for responsible spending, but I think we need to place more emphasis on the other side of the equation, which is earning more money. My mentor gave me this advice, and it was truly life-changing for me, that you can only save as much as you earn, but you can always earn more money. And it is so hard to cut out $5,000, $10,000 of discretionary expenses. You don't get to have Netflix anymore. You don't get to go out to drinks with your friends. You don't get that mani-pedi. You don't get to have fun. Do you know how easy it is to get a $5,000 to $10,000 raise? That happens all the time, and it happens for millions and millions of people. Many people get much larger raises than when they get promoted, when they jump jobs, whatever. It is so much easier to earn more money by being like a staunch negotiator, leveling up your skills, and having a essentially receipt list of all of the times that you were a valuable add to the team versus trying to cut every single thing in your life that brings you an ounce of joy, because you're not just trying to be financially well to survive. You want to thrive. You actually want to enjoy your life. And I think we need to focus more on the earning piece than the cutting piece.
Yeah. And you've certainly shown a great example of that. I think you were talking about how you were making somewhere close to like 600, 700,000 a year at Bus before you got into your full-time gig now. And I guess that's probably one of the biggest levers that people have. It's people will get 5 to 10% raises, but I would imagine that first negotiation tactic can put you in a much higher ceiling. How do people negotiate their salary? What's the kind of the process that you've learned over all these years to negotiate an initial higher salary from your previous job, or maybe even for clients if you are negotiating a speaking gig or a consulting contract?
Yeah, so you're saying like before I start a job?
Yeah, your first time meeting the employer, you're kind of negotiating.
So typically what happens is HR will call you and they'll be like, congratulations, you got the job, we love you, like we'll send over an employment offer, and this is what the rate is going to be. And you say, thank you so much. I am so appreciative. I would love to take a look at this formal offer. And then once you've taken a look, you can tell them, I am so excited to start. I'm very happy. I love the team. I'm wondering if you have any flexibility on the salary, as I'd love to see that come in closer to XYZ number. And then all you do is stop talking. Everybody does this thing, and I am the number one victim. They will make a most beautiful argument, best pitch, negotiate like a king. And then they'll be like, but if not, that's okay. Why did you say that? Why did you say that? And so I always say, let them tell you no, but make the ask and then just shut up. Just shut up and sit there. And let it be awkward for them. And they'll typically come back, and what they'll say is not yes, is not no. They'll say, I'm going to need to check. And you're like, absolutely no problem. Then they're going to go back and they're going to call you back eventually, and they're going to likely say, something along the lines of, we were able to get this for you, or more likely than not, it's not a yes, it's not a no, but they'll meet you somewhere in the middle. But you'll have already gotten more just for having the balls to ask. And that's powerful, because now you're not starting from the start line. You're starting slightly above the start line. And that means every year from now on out, you're not starting from here. You're starting from here. And so 10% on a bigger number is a bigger raise. And so I always say, advocate for yourself. Make sure that you are asking for more money when you get a job offer. And then every single year after that, around June, I want people to start setting meetings with their managers and start, discussing, hey, like, these were my goals for the year. I'm tracking, everything's going great. Oh, by the way, I am, my expectation is a raise of XYZ based on the contributions I made to the team. And then what I want you to do is have a folder in your inbox. Anytime something good happens, client compliments you, there's a chart showing how much work you did, blah, blah, blah. Be like, these are the quantifiable reasons why I deserve this money. And don't be annoying, but you need to set this meeting with your manager probably every month or two. And you're going to keep showing how you are tracking on for the goal every month or two. You're tracking on the goal. You're continuing to perform above expectations. You're continuing to do high quality work. You're crushing it. Show all of the receipts. And that way, when October comes around, November comes around, and your manager needs to go and advocate for people on his team to HR, they're going to allocate them a budget. And then they're going to have to divvy up that budget based on the people on their team. And because you've been asking since June or July, your name is top of mind. What the mistake many people make is that they start asking for money in November or December. My dudes, those budgets have already been set. It's already too late. If you're reading this, it's too late. Like, you need to ask before everyone else asks. Otherwise, you're just a name on a list. Unless you can stand out and your boss knows that if you do not get paid, there's going to be problems. You're not going to want to keep working here. They're not incentivized to pay you. So I always say, advocate, demand what you're worth, get your money. Don't do it at the end of the year. Do it starting the middle.
Yeah. What's like the nuance there when you're talking about the goals that you're trying to accomplish that you want to follow up on? So if, for example, I guess if you can figure out a way to generate revenue, if you're like in sales, that's an easy, very tangible thing that you can come back to and say, oh, I increased the sales for this company, and justifies why you should be paying more. What if you're not in a revenue generating department? What if you're doing something like, I don't know, customer support or something that's a little bit far from revenue? Should you still figure out a way to make it seem like you're generating revenue for the company, or figuring out a way to tie that? What are the goals that will likely increase the chances of getting a salary raise?
Yeah, I think it's always having quantifiable numbers. So say you're in a support role and you're not directly impacting revenue. It can be something as simple as, this quarter, or like, this year, I will have worked on 32 presentations. My peers at most have worked on 27. My peers have ranged from XYZ to this. I'm 2 standard deviations above the mean. If you are working in social, it's like, I have grown this by this. These are the percentages of that growth. Maybe it's, hey, I'm a designer or a writer. Like, everybody else on this team pumps out 3 articles a week. I pump out 5. I am doing better than others, and I have numbers to prove it. It doesn't have to be revenue specific, but it has to be numbers.
Right. Makes sense. So you got that raise, you got that 10% or 5% raise at the end of the year, and you're chugging along, you have some little extra profits. Let's say someone has somewhere around $5,000 after taxes to now invest or spend, whatever it might be for them. How does that money flow? where does that go? Is it go into multiple savings accounts? Is it go into an investment account? Like, how would you advise an average person looking to grow their wealth invest that 5,000 they have after each month?
I encourage people to utilize my strip method. So S stands for savings. Make sure you have 3 to 6 months of living expenses set aside in a high yield savings account first. Then you move into total debt. You rank your debt from highest to lowest interest rate, make the minimum payment across everything, and then any additional dollars for debt paydown are used towards the debt with the highest interest rate. I encourage people to wipe all high interest rate debt before doing anything else. So that is mostly credit card debt. Then we move into retirement. So you're opening up accounts like an IRA or traditional or Roth IRA, making sure you're taking advantage of your employer-sponsored retirement program, whether that be a 401k, a 403b, 457, TSP. It's always some weird acronym. And then you actually put cash in, and then you have to buy stuff. You have to invest. And I am simple. I'm boring. I say, consider a target date retirement fund, consider index funds. And if that still makes your head spin, just utilize a robo-advisor where you can take a quick quiz about your money goals and it'll spit out a diversified portfolio for you. Then I would say P is one of the most important steps because it allows you to plan. You got to know what your happily ever after looks like, what it costs to get there. And I encourage people to calculate their FU numbers. So you essentially just close your eyes and envision your perfect year and where you live, what's your family look like? Do you have pets? Are you traveling? Do you have a car? Any of that stuff. And then you calculate roughly what 1 year of that life would cost. You divide it by 0.04. And the number you get is how much you would have to have invested to be able to kick over your desk and tell your boss, F you.
Why 0.04?
Yeah, great question. So 0.04 represents 4%, which is a very conservative investment return that you would be able to get on that larger number. And once you have that, you are able to throw off enough investment returns to fund your entire lifestyle while you don't work.
Right. And does it matter what like kind of the treasuries are paying right now, or do you just assume that treasuries will probably go down from 5%? So 4% is probably the average of like what you can get on a safe return?
Yeah, I think 4% has historically just been a very, very conservative return. I mean, like right now, you can get 4.5%, 5% in a high yield savings account. So certainly there are investments that are going to pay significantly more or earn you more than that. But 4% through fixed income products has been pretty obtainable throughout, the past multiple decades, throughout quite some time now. So I think it's a number that we can feel confident that you'd be able to get.
Yeah. Well, I like this FU calculation. It's got a zing to it. How does that number change? Has that number changed for you? Because, we get on this hedonic treadmill where as soon as we start making a little bit more money, our taste starts to get a little bit more luxurious. Mm-hmm. We start to expect certain things from an apartment, from the restaurants that we eat. How do we mentally, or maybe even spiritually, make sure that we're not trying to keep up with the Joneses, and that whatever calculation that we make now before we make money doesn't blow out of proportion, so that we're constantly on this treadmill trying to earn more money for the sake of earning more money? Have you been able to adjust your tastes and your expenses as well as you start to make more money so that you're not constantly upgrading your lifestyle?
Yeah, I think it's about really understanding where your values lie. There have been some major upgrades in my life. My home is a lot nicer than when I was 22. My vacations that I go on are a lot nicer than when I was 22. But there are other things that I just don't value as much. Like I don't buy coffee out. Rarely do I ever. And I don't really do a lot of retail shopping. And when I do, I'm shopping at places like Marshall's because I know I can get nice stuff for 20 to 50% off retail. I don't feel the need to try and impress random people anymore by having a giant designer monogram logo emblazoned across my forehead. I'm not a walking billboard, and I am putting money for things that really like show me value. I think, my fiance and I were having this conversation about like, oh, we're thinking about maybe like buying or leasing a car, or like doing something like that. And he was like, oh, like, should we get something like cool and like a sports car? And I was like, how about something a little bit more practical and understated? And he was like, oh, where's the fun in that? But for me, a car is like, first off, like, let's be clear, I'm not like racing my vehicle. This is not Fast and Furious. Like, I'm just trying to get from point A to point B, and I want something that is going to provide me the lowest monthly cost and be safe. That's really what matters to me. So I think it really comes from thinking about what values and like, what are your values and what makes sense for you? What really actually sparks joy? Shout out Marie Kondo, but like, does it spark joy? Because sometimes I spent a lot of money on stuff and I'm like, yes, 10,000% would do again. And there are other times that I've spent a lot of money on stuff and I'm like, I have never regretted anything more. That was such a waste. And I wish I could get that money and that time and maybe those, that stomach space or, whatever back. And I think it's really about understanding what makes you happy, because the answer is different for all of us.
Yeah. Well, before we close off, I just want to acknowledge you, Vivian, for the message that you're putting out for the world. I think you're a great example for the younger generation, for the older generation, for females, males, all across different races. It's clear that your message resonates, and I can see why. So I want to make sure people check out your book. You have a podcast as well that's coming out, right? What else is the thing that we should point people towards?
Yeah, I would love it if everybody would go and grab a copy of my book, Rich AF. It's a New York Times bestseller. It is top rated on Amazon. You can find it at richaf.me. I made the URL a manifestation. I am currently working on season 2 of my podcast, Net Worth and Chill. And you can find me across all social media as Your Rich BFF.
Amazing. Well, I have a last question for you, Vivian. So speaking of Rich AF, I think one of the things that I think people really resonate towards is the way you come across it. It's very fearless, right? It's very bold. You're very confident. And it's almost, I think people sometimes struggle with that. And I think a lot of people, I'm sure, watch you because they admire that, right? They aspire to be someone like that. When you're only 30, to be able to have that confidence and to share your message to millions of people around the world. And you have this very don't give AF attitude that I think is very admirable. How have you built that up for yourself, and how can you encourage others to be able to be themselves, to share their message without giving AF?
Yeah, honestly, fake it till you make it. I may look tough. I am a soft jelly donut on the inside. I am very, very sensitive. And when I first started creating content, I got some nasty messages and I would like cry. I would be like so sad. I would be like devastated that some random hater on the internet didn't like me. But over time, I thought about it this way. I am bold and brave enough to do something that very few people are bold and brave enough to do. Not only has that paid off for me financially, it's paid off for me career-wise. And I get to wake up every single day and do something super cool, oftentimes in my sweatpants, help people from behind their phone screens, and I get to make a difference. So between me and the random troll that I'm arguing with on the internet, both of us look like idiots because we're fighting in the comment section, but only I'm getting paid to be there. And so I think that's my mic drop moment, and that I've realized that what I am doing is helping so many people. It is valuable. It is needed. And so I have this attitude of like irreverence because I know my mission, I know my heart, I know what I'm doing is good. And if some idiot on the internet doesn't like it, then too bad.
That's it. Well, thanks for sharing your message, and we're cheering you on.
Thank you so much.